What's up? It's Tyler Bischoff from Technically Correct. On today's show, the Golden Knights went to overtime again. I know, it's shocking. But does Bruce Cassidy know what his best lines are? Plus, the Raiders are somehow the most important team in the AFC's race for the 1 seed. And the NCAA Tournament is probably going to expand soon. Will UNLV actually be able to get in? If you want to sponsor the show, please email me at technicallycorrectvegas@gmail.com. That's where you can get in touch with me, and we can do a lot of fun stuff sponsoring this show. I will love you, and I will make sure everybody else loves you. That's the goal. technicallycorrectvegas@gmail.com. Here we go. Yesterday's show, I asked the question, are the Golden Knights just an average team? I don't know if we got an answer. The Golden Knights can't stop going to overtime. The Golden Knights have now gone to overtime in 12 of their 29 games. That is 41% of their games. Last year, it was 14 overtime games in 82 regular season games. And if you take the last 4 seasons, 22% of the Golden Knights games have gone to overtime. So far this season, they're nearly doubling that rate. So, are the Golden Knights just an average team? 17 of their games have gone to either overtime or been decided by 1 goal in regulation. They have 14 wins and 15 losses. If you strip out the overtime loss and regular loss column in the standings, put them together, it's 14 wins and 15 losses. At 5-on-5, Vegas has scored 56 goals this year and allowed 53. All of that says the Golden Knights are just an average team. So we've seen 29 games of this. That's more than a third of the season. Is that just what the Golden Knights are? An average team that plays close games with everyone, right? A playoff level team, but not a true cup contender. Or is that the floor of the Vegas Golden Knights? And they will take off once they start playing a little bit better. I'll give you one stat to maybe make you optimistic. If the NHL removed overtime and suddenly all these games just ended as ties, the Golden Knights record would be 11 wins, 12 ties, and 6 losses. That actually sounds a little bit better. 11 wins to 6 losses is a good ratio. It's just those 12 ties in the middle that are problematic. So I don't know how good this team actually is, right? If we set the bar of Stanley Cup contender at Colorado Avalanche, they're not there, and they might not be there the entire season. But is Colorado going to be this good when the playoffs come around? Are they peaking too early? One of my favorite phrases. Like, that might be the case for Colorado, or they might just simply be this awesome for the entire season, and we're like, yeah, Colorado wins the Stanley Cup because they were best from start to finish. The bar, and here's the thing in hockey, the bar can be lower than Colorado because hockey playoffs are a bit more random than most of our sports. Hockey and baseball are the most random. And so you don't have to be as good as Colorado or really even that close to them in the regular season to potentially beat them in a playoff series. So I think some of the keys for the Golden Knights, one is that it is December and this team should be playing its best, ideally is playing its best when you get to the playoffs, right? That's an objective there. Again, I don't know, is this their best? Is what we've seen through 29 games their best? And if that's the case, then I don't think they're winning the Stanley Cup. But it's December, and there's all the reason in the world to think this team can actually improve and be a lot better. The players, the names are there on this roster, right? Adin Hill coming back should help. So it's just weird to me because I don't know what to make of this team, because what they're showing us every single game is, oh yeah, they're average. I mean, hell, take the Islanders. They've played the Islanders twice, both times. The game's gone to overtime because one of the teams, they flipped spots, but one of the teams scored a late goal to tie it, and then they go to overtime. Islanders scored that shorthanded goal in overtime the first time they played, and then you lose in a shootout. But it just is like, okay, how good are the Golden Knights? Because they seem pretty average based on their results, but it feels like there's more in there, and this team could take off at some point. By the way, the shootout, we were watching professional hockey players, right? They didn't switch those guys out with just random people in the stands. Like I don't know that I've seen a worse shootout. Pavel Dorofeyev goes first for Vegas, and he gets a shot off, which is better than most actually, but he misses the net. Okay, not great. It happens, but not good. Um, Mitch Marner went and he just lost the puck trying to make a move. Never got a shot attempt off. Jack Eichel did get a shot on goal. Good job, Jack Eichel. And then Shea Theodore lost the puck, just like Mitch Marner, doesn't get a shot off. The Islanders finally scored because they had a guy who lost the puck as well, and they had a shot that missed the net. 4 attempts from the Golden Knights. They only put 1 on net. The Islanders, not a whole lot better. When you combine it, it was 8 total shooters. We had 2 saves, 1 goal, and 5 either non-attempts or misses. What was that? It's one of the most pathetic shootouts that I think you're ever going to see. But the Golden Knights losing a shootout, which means they don't get the extra point. They do get another loser point. They get a lot of those. They're very good at getting the loser points, but they don't get the extra point in the shootout. Now, some parts of that game that I found interesting. First off, I think a positive wrinkle, a positive trend that we're seeing. The Golden Knights have been getting a lot of chances on the power play from Mitch Marner shooting from the point. And it appears to be a counter, or at least just sort of a next option for when teams take away the pass from Mark Stone across the crease to Pavel Dorofeyev. When teams do that, they're usually committing body to either side of the post, if not 2, one to where Stone is, one to where Dorofeyev is. And that means it opens up the middle of the ice a little bit more, opens up the slot a little bit more. And what we've seen is when the Golden Knights can quickly move the puck, Marner gets it right at the point, right at the blue line, and is able to shoot it straight down the slot. We have seen Tomas Hertl tip in a couple of goals doing that in recent games. Dorofeyev almost got one last night. He was in a different spot when they did this. And even the game-tying goal last night for the Golden Knights, it wasn't a power play, but it was a 6-on-5 scenario. And Marner shot it from the point. It hit Hertl or a defenseman. I don't know who it actually hit, but Hertl and a defenseman were right there. It hit them, fell on the ice, and kind of fell free to Pavel Dorofeyev, who was able to shoot and tie the game. So again, not directly on a power play, but a very similar setup. And if you remember, Golden Knights start the season, the power play is like, this is the greatest power play the world has ever seen. Then Mark Stone gets hurt, and all of a sudden, they can't score. And it's like, is Mark Stone the most important player in the history of NHL power plays? Because it certainly looked like it. They couldn't do anything else to score. And it was just weird because you're like, all right, sure, Stone is good at that role. But Jack Eichel's on this team, Mitch Marner's on this team, Tomas Hertl's on this team, and they're all on the top power play unit. And you're telling me that they can't do something else to generate good looks and generate goals. And honestly, it looked like that for a couple of weeks. But now we've seen some goal production from a different area, from a different, basically play off of the power play. And in theory, if it keeps working, it is a shot from the point that's getting tipped. So it's not like it's not quite as, I'd say, reliable as Pavel Dorofeyev getting to shoot into an open net on a one-timer. But it has worked. And if it does work, in theory, it should open back up that pass from Stone to Pavel Dorofeyev more often, because teams will say, oh, Tomas Hertl keeps tipping in these pucks that Marner's shooting from the point. We need to make sure we get a body there and keep a body there. And then that body's got to come from one of the posts, and now there's a passing lane, or maybe a bigger passing lane for Stone to try to find Dorofeyev. So we've seen that a few times over the last couple of games, and I think that's obviously a positive trend. Now, one of the concerning parts of last night was the Islanders' second goal, and concerning because I don't know how many times the events that led to the Islanders' goal are actually going to happen. Because if you run through that, Golden Knights have the puck and they're trying to break out of the defensive zone. They're trying to move forward. and Mitch Marner loses the puck at his own blue line. Now, the Islanders don't jump on this. I think they were going for a change at the time. The Islanders don't jump on this. The Golden Knights retain possession, but they're back in their defensive zone and they've got to sort of break out again. Shea Theodore then has the puck behind his own net, tries to make a fairly simple pass around the boards to Brayden McNabb. And it's an errant pass that the Islanders do jump on this turnover. And quickly the puck is right behind the net. Theodore's now having to defend, and we see a circle around to the post and then a pass to the slot and a goal for New York. The pass to the slot was open because Mitch Marner was there, and then for some reason, as the puck circles around the back of the net, he decides to abandon the slot and take away the pass back out to the blue line. Curious decision from Marner. Obviously, the more dangerous guy is the dude standing in the slot. Gatcomb's just standing there by himself in the slot once Marner makes that decision. But Marner's a winger. Why is Marner the one defending a guy in the slot by himself? Well, it's because of Shea Theodore's turnover, right? Theodore's turnover, one, Brayden McNabb is on the boards in the corner waiting for this puck. And when it's turned over, McNabb's now got to get back to the slot, and he's slow to do so. But not only that, Jack Eichel was gone. Jack Eichel was in the neutral zone. As soon as Theodore goes to play that pass around the boards, Eichel took off. He's trying to get up the ice potentially for a good breakout. Somebody can hit him on a good pass and he can be in alone or one-on-one or something like that. But he takes off, which means when that puck is turned over, Eichel's now out of position and he's now having to get back and he's not there to help defend the slot. Marner should recognize that and not leave the slot to try to break up a pass going to the point. You should be hoping they pass it back out to the point because by then Eichel or McNabb can recover and you can sort of get more into your normal defensive struggle. So Marner still sort of messed up there, but Eichel and McNabb were out of position because of Theodore's pass. So you're looking at this and it's like, all right, Marner had one mistake, Theodore had one mistake, and then Marner made another one while Eichel and McNabb were out of position. How many times is all of that going to happen? I don't think very often, right? Those are some of your best players on the ice making mistake after mistake after mistake. Also wanted to point out what I thought was interesting from that goal. Different scenarios, right? One was in overtime. This was at 5-on-5, but the Golden Knights scored their game-winning goal in overtime against the Rangers, and it was when Shea Theodore had the puck near his own net, and Jack Eichel just took off up the ice. In overtime, Theodore had a lot of space and banks it off the boards. Eichel gets the breakaway and scores the game winner. Last night, Theodore's got the puck by his own net. Eichel takes off up the ice. Theodore's pass is a turnover, and now the puck is in the back of the Golden Knights net. In the span of two games, we saw, again, not exactly the same scenario, but the same idea, and one puck end up in the opponent's net and one puck end up in the Golden Knights net. So some risk reward there you're seeing play out that you normally don't see play out sort of that quickly or that back-to-back in this game. Now, some other stuff. Colton Sissons was back in. He played fourth line center, which meant Riley Smith went up to third line winger and Brandon Saad came out of the lineup. Smith and Saad might just be replacement level players at this point. I would try Smith over Saad like we saw Cassidy do last night. Interesting note, though, Smith, Hurdle, and Dorofeyev, that was the third line last night. They took the most defensive zone faceoffs. Normally, the Hurdle-Dorofeyev combo is first or second in offensive zone faceoffs, but they took the most defensive zone faceoffs, which is interesting because Riley Smith he can't escape it no matter what line he's on. He's only taking defensive zone faceoffs. But the line hogging all the offensive zone faceoffs last night was Marner, Howden, and Stone. Unsurprisingly, that line had the best expected goals rate, while the third line with Hurdle and Dorofeyev and Smith had the worst expected goals rate of the game. I also thoroughly enjoyed that the Golden Knights scored 2 goals off the same exact rebound. Shoot it from the goalie's left to the goalie's right pad, and the rebound pops out. First at 4-on-4, it was Noah Hannafin, and then at 5-on-5, it was Mitch Marner. Both of them wide open with an open net to shoot at after this rebound, and Sorokin can't get across quick enough. The funny part about the Marner one, though, is Brett Howden skated to the front of the net as the initial shot's being taken, and two defensemen went with him, leaving Marner all alone. So Brett Howden is now commanding these double teams to free up Mitch Marner and make sure that he gets a good look. So that's a big part of it. One last thing. We saw Barbashev, Eichel, and Bowman as the top line, and that's actually been the second most used line at 5-on-5 for the Golden Knights this season. I was surprised to see that because it feels like Braden Bowman still just got here. The only line that's been used more is Dorofeyev, Hertl, and Marner. But Cassidy broke up that Eichel line at the very end of the second period for only a couple of shifts, because then at the start of the third period, he put them back together and they scored. Now, granted, it was Barbashev with a diving one-handed slap goal. I don't know if you say, oh yeah, they're good to go now because they scored that. But I do wonder, and it's December, so you don't necessarily have to know this, but does Bruce Cassidy know what his best lines are? Like, does he feel like, oh yeah, in the playoffs, this is who I'm going to play together? Because I don't know that he does. Doesn't have to. They're still in a good spot in the standings. They're not in some sort of desperation mode where they've got to start picking up all of the points. But I don't feel like they know what their best lines are at this point. And that'll be something that they need to figure out, obviously, before the playoffs. But maybe, to go back to my initial point of, hey, this team is just average, I feel like they could play better and take off, but we haven't really seen that. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe once they figure out the line combinations, whatever they end up being, maybe that's what helps this team click and take off. Is like, oh, that first line and that second line is what we've been looking for. So we're going to use that, and that's going to help us go from this average team that always goes to overtime, always plays 1-goal games, to, hey, we beat some teams by 2 or 3 every now and then. And hey, we actually win most of our games in regulation, not lose most of them in overtime. But now it's time for Bischoff's Briefs. Bischoff's Briefs this entire week is brought to you by Go Army Beat Navy. Thanks to Rob, who wanted to sponsor Bischoff's Briefs specifically to trash talk Navy. Army-Navy play this weekend, so thank you to Rob, and Go Army Beat Navy. Now, in Bischoff's Briefs, did you know the Raiders could decide the number 1 seed in the AFC? Denver right now has a tiebreaker over New England, and it's probably going to stick. And the tiebreaker, because they haven't played each other and don't play each other, is common opponent. And the 6 games that both teams have played against common opponents, Denver is 6-0 and New England is 5-1. And the only loss there for New England is week 1 to the Raiders. And so right now that's what decides the number 1 seed in the AFC. And if both teams were to win out, that is what would decide the number 1 seed in the AFC. If there's another loss from each team in there, it'll still probably be what decides it, unless somebody else jumps up in there in the mix. But who gets a bye? Who gets home field throughout the AFC side of the playoffs? It's probably going to could come down to the Raiders beating New England in week 1, which how did that happen? The Raiders looked legitimately competent in that game, right? And they didn't score a ton of points. I think it was 21 offensive points, but like the defense looked good. Geno Smith was throwing the ball down the field in that game. That was this team's winning 8 games for sure performance. And then since then, the Raiders have become a disaster, and the Patriots yeah, we're one of the best teams in the league. Their strength of schedule is very easy. I am fascinated by that discussion, but how did week 1 happen? I don't know. I mean, last year they beat the Ravens in a game with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. That was how did that happen? A couple of years ago, they beat the Chiefs, right? In the game where Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass in the last 3 quarters, and they still managed to win. 2 defensive touchdowns. So they seem to do this every year where they win a game and you're like, I don't know how they did that. We just didn't know the Patriots were going to be that good when they did it in week 1. The A's, the soon-to-be Las Vegas A's, they will pick 8th in the 2026 MLB draft they were one of the losers of the draft lottery because they went in with the sixth best odds and fell back a couple of spots. It was the Giants and the Royals that made the two big leaps forward into the top six. The White Sox won the draft lottery. Obviously, the Pope is a White Sox fan, so he's not strong enough to get that terrible roster into the playoffs, I guess, but is strong enough to change some ping pong balls around. But I got some complaints for you because first off, did you know the MLB draft lottery was yesterday? I'm going to guess no. The NFL does such a good job at making every single event of their season a television show, a spectacle, and a talking point. Major League Baseball held their draft lottery. It was televised on MLB Network. It was at 5:30 Eastern, which is 2:30 Pacific, and it just wasn't that big of a deal or anything to look forward to. And like the NFL doesn't do a lottery. The NBA does, but the NFL doesn't do a lottery. But can you imagine the television show that would happen around an NFL draft lottery? It would be huge. Hell, we'd be like, oh, this is the most watched television show in the month of March or whenever they would decide to hold it. So first off, Major League Baseball, just nobody knows what's happening. But second, this thing is way too confusing. 3 teams didn't have a chance to win the lottery despite being bad enough to be in the lottery. And it's because Major League Baseball, they just put in the lottery a couple of years ago, but they put in rules. So no one can have a lottery pick, and lottery is top 6. No one can have a lottery pick 3 straight years. And the Rockies have had it 2 straight years. So they could not be in the top 6. We're trying to get tanking out of baseball. Teams, not many teams are actually tanking in baseball. Their owners are just cheap. But whatever. So the Rockies couldn't be in there. And then if you pay into revenue sharing, so not if you're over the luxury tax, but if you pay into revenue sharing, you can't be in the lottery 2 years in a row. And the Nationals and Angels are both teams that were into revenue sharing, but were in the top 6 last year. So Colorado, Washington, and LA or Anaheim couldn't be in the lottery despite being bad enough to have lottery odds. They just had 0% odds. And then the Mets, they were in the lottery because they missed the playoffs. So if they got into the top 6, if they won a lottery pick, they would have kept their pick. But if not, they dropped 10 spots because they are paying the luxury tax, and that's one of the punishments of paying into the luxury tax. I think it's 2 years in a row if you do it. That's one of the punishments of paying into the luxury tax multiple years is your pick drops 10 spots. So the Mets had to win a top 6 lottery spot or else fall 10, and that means they're picking 27th. They fell all the way back to 27th in the draft last night. Why are there so many rules? It's wild to me that there were so many rules that meant these teams can't pick in the lottery. This team could, but if they're not in the lottery, they basically don't have a first round pick. I don't know. It was just bizarre, and it makes it more confusing, harder to understand, and just less popular. I gave you an update yesterday on the chances of Las Vegas landing a relocation MLS team because the Vancouver Whitecaps they're up for sale, and their lease is up in their current arena or stadium, BC Place in Vancouver. Major League Soccer is not happy with the situation. Major League Soccer wants them to own their own stadium, and that's not happening in Vancouver right now. And The Athletic reported that there are 6 cities that have ownership groups that are sort of interested in maybe acquiring the team and moving them, and Vegas is one of those 6 cities. But this is from the website Business Intelligence for BC, for British Columbia, not Boston College or something else. But Vancouver Whitecaps CEO Axel Schuster, great name, he told the media on Monday that, quote, "It's not wrong to be concerned, but then it's also not wrong to raise your concerns and get behind us." Whatever that means. But the team is for sale and they don't have a lease at their current stadium. And MLS wants them to own their own stadium. There's apparently a potential that they buy some land where there used to be a racetrack or currently is a racetrack and build a new stadium there. But even if they do that, that's going to take some time to happen. So they'd have to stay at BC Place, sign a new lease, and then 3 years from now move into a new stadium. I don't think the Whitecaps are going to relocate to Las Vegas. I went over that yesterday. If you missed it, find the show on YouTube. I'm not going to rehash everything, but I don't think they're coming to Vegas. We don't have a stadium ready for them either. But it doesn't sound great in Vancouver, right? Like, we're at a point where they don't have a lease and the league is saying, hey, you should build your own stadium. And they're like, oh, well, that's going to take some time. So it's not great. So we'll see what happens with the Whitecaps. I don't think they're coming to Vegas, but it'll probably be floated out there at least a few more times as they try to get a better lease. Do they do public funding in Canada? Something to make their stadium situation better. In college football, I was surprised by this news. Well, I'll get to the surprise part. But Bob Chesney, he's the head coach at James Madison, or he's the outgoing coach at James Madison. He's going to coach him in the playoffs, but he's taken the UCLA job. According to Ben Bolch of the LA Times, his deal at UCLA is 5 years, $6.75 million. The surprising part that I learned yesterday is that he was making less than $1 million as the head coach at James Madison, $833,000 to be the head coach at James Madison. So he got a huge raise going to UCLA. I don't know if UCLA can be good at football. I don't know if he thinks UCLA can be good at football, but going from less than $1 million to 6.7, he almost got $6 million raise out of this, is a no-brainer. But the numbers here are interesting because if you look at UNLV football and what could potentially happen next offseason, if UNLV puts up a 9-10 win season again, Dan Mullen makes $3.5 million, right? And if we use this as a barometer, $6.75 million from a Big Ten school, which, by the way, is only 9th in the Big Ten, right? Teams absolutely pay more than that. That's not even a high dollar amount. But that is nearly doubling what Dan Mullen's current salary is. So if they have a good season, if somebody's coming for Dan Mullen with $7 million a year, I do wonder, how high can UNLV go? Can they get to $5 million per year to pay a football coach? And would that matter, right? If somebody came along and said, here's $7 million to coach in the Big Ten, or probably for Dan Mullen, maybe the SEC, would he say, no, I'm staying at UNLV for $5 million? Probably not. He's probably still leaving for $7 million. So I wonder, how high could UNLV go? Because they're already paying Dan Mullen near the top of all Group of 5 coaches, top of the Mountain West. Can they go higher than that, or did they sort of max out on their first deal with Dan Mullen? So that part of it is sort of interesting, looking at what's happened across the league. Now, last story in Bischoff's briefs today. Is Philip Rivers going to play football this weekend? Jordan Schultz reported that Philip Rivers, who the Colts did in fact sign to the practice squad yesterday, and is in fact 44 years old, and apparently a grandfather? I don't know. I saw that on Twitter. I don't know if it was true or not. Is he a grandfather at 44? And who last played in 2020. According to Jordan Schultz, he could be the starting quarterback for the Colts this weekend. They play the Seahawks, so good luck to 44-year-old Philip Rivers against one of the best defenses. I think they're second in the league in sacks. That's not the team you want to come back and play. But is that going to happen? Like, they lost Daniel Jones for the season. I know Riley Leonard's beat up, and Riley Leonard's probably not good enough to even justify, okay, we want to see what we can have here. But like, what? 44-year-old Philip Rivers is going to sign on a Tuesday and then come play. J.J. Watt said yesterday that Philip Rivers has been running the same offense at the high school he's been coaching that the Colts run. So he knows the offense and can just step in and do it. By the way, I got questions about that. I know he's the coach, so he should, in theory, know the stuff. But like, a high school team's running the same offense as the Colts? How good is Philip Rivers' quarterback? Because I don't know if you've seen a lot of high school football. The vast majority of them do not have a quarterback that can throw the ball. And like, the idea that, oh yeah, we're running the same offense as the NFL. What do you mean by that? Who's running the same offenses? Your run schemes are the same as what the Colts are running, or like, you're trying to call the same pass plays? Because I don't know if you've seen it. Daniel Jones throws the ball down the field. I don't think that's happened in high school. Are they that much better? Find that hard to believe. But 44-year-old Philip Rivers might be playing football this year, this week. I guess I want to see it. I don't know. Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be sad? Like, is Philip Rivers going to trot out there and just get crushed on every play, can't make the throws, can't move enough. Like, is it going to be sad? Because I don't think I want to see it if it's just going to be sad and depressing. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's 44. But if he's at least just a little bad, I want to see it. 44-year-old guy throwing it around out there? Be fascinating. That's Bischoff's Briefs. Again, thank you to Rob for sponsoring Bischoff's Briefs, one of my favorite listeners, because of this sponsorship. All he wants to do is tell you that Navy's bad at football and that Army's going to beat him. Go Army, beat Navy. Thank you, Rob, for sponsoring Bischoff's Briefs. In the world of college basketball, the NCAA tournament is almost surely going to expand. It actually didn't happen in the fall when it seemed it was going to happen. They were going to announce expansion and didn't happen. So this year's NCAA tournament is still 68 teams. But Ross Dellinger tweeted out yesterday that NCAA President Charlie Baker reemphasized that the NCAA is continuing down the path of expanding the NCAA tournament. We also got somewhat of a deadline for the 2026-2027 NCAA tournament, is that they need to decide by April. So 5 months from now, I'm going to guess that they do, and that we have a 76-team tournament. That's the number that's been thrown out there. That means that 24 teams would have to go to play-in rounds. Only 52 teams would be directly into the round of 64, and we would have multiple days of, I think that's 6 games on Tuesday, 6 games on Wednesday before the NCAA tournament starts on Thursday. I want to say this, the NCAA tournament is absolutely a drug where I know this is bad. Like this is dumb. We don't need 76 teams. I'm going to watch every single one of these games. It's going to happen. I'm going to watch all of them, right? The part that I do think is potentially bad, or maybe it's slippery slope bad, is the bracket side of this, because imagine, right, like you're filling out your bracket, Selection Sunday, and maybe you're somebody that does it Sunday night or Monday. You do it quick. You do it within 24 hours of the bracket coming out. Well, when you do that, there's going to be 12 blank spots on your bracket because you're waiting for play-in teams, right? And some of these play-in teams are going to be like, I think we might get up as high as 10 seeds potentially. So like you're going to have potentially like teams that might win a couple of games, right? Hell, 11 seeds do it all the time. That just, you don't know who they are. And so it's going to make it difficult to fill it out then. But if you wait until these games are over, there's should be 6 games on Tuesday and 6 games on Wednesday. You could wait until after Tuesday and then fill it out on Wednesday, but you still have 6 open spots. And again, some of them are going to be 11 and 10 seeds. If you wait until all of these games are done, you're waiting until late at night on Wednesday when the tournament starts early Thursday morning. It's just, I know there's already some of these, but it's still pretty limited at this point. And half of them are 16 seeds, so it's not that, 2 out of the 4 16. I don't know. It just seems like filling out a bracket's going to be a little bit more of a hassle to actually do this. But the part of this that I was sort of interested in is, okay, a 76-team NCAA tournament. You're adding teams. That's good. Can UNLV even make the tournament when it's 76 teams, right? It's not going to happen this year unless they win the Mountain West tournament. Same story it's been for a decade. But if you look back during UNLV's NCAA tournament drought, there has only been 2 teams that I think would even be on the bubble of a 76-team tournament. And it's the very first team of this drought, which was Dave Rice was the head coach there. They finished 79th in KenPom, which is not going to be enough unless your other metrics are really strong. It's not going to be enough to get into the NCAA tournament. And then Kevin Kruger's second to last year, they actually ended up finishing 73rd in KenPom. You say, 76 teams in, they're 73rd, they should be in. You won't be, because the 73rd best team won't be in because of the automatic qualifiers from winning other conferences. So there's only been 2 times in the decade that UNLV's missed the tournament that I think they'd even be in the conversation or on the bubble. And even then, I don't think they're getting in. So the tournament's going to expand, and it still would not have changed UNLV's drought over the years. It's not great. It's not a good sign, but that is the reality of where UNLV football is, or excuse me, UNLV basketball is at this point. UNLV football is actually in a great spot. Yeah, no problems whatsoever. So that's that for right now. Now, I went in the show with something kind of funny. So Pete Carroll got asked earlier this week about his decision to kick the field goal that led to the Raiders covering the spread on the final play of the game against the Broncos on Sunday. And specifically, he was asked about like his view on sports betting and the reaction to that based on sports betting. Because if you're unaware, the Raiders were down by 10. They were 8.5-point underdogs. He kicks the field goal as time expires, and they lose by 7. So the Raiders cover the spread on this field goal that they didn't need to kick. Whatever. It also was only possible because of a delay of game penalty on the defense, right? The clock was going to run out, but the Broncos had a delay of game penalty because they ripped the ball out of Tyler Lockett's hands. And so that gave the Raiders a chance to get the field goal unit on and kick a field goal as time expires. But Pete Carroll got asked about this, and he mentioned one of the funniest endings to an NFL game ever, and he was the coach of it. And the point spread was relevant in this, but Buffalo was leading New England 21-17 back in a game in 1998, and New England throws it to the end zone as time expires. The pass is incomplete, but they call pass interference. So the Patriots get one more play with the clock at 0 from the 1-yard line. Drew Bledsoe threw a touchdown to a tight end, and the Patriots took a 23-21 lead. Important note here, the point spread was 3.5 in this game. Buffalo was plus 3.5. So they scored this touchdown to go up by 2. They have to kick the extra point, and you should be good. They kick the extra point, and New England wins by 3. You still are good with Buffalo plus 3.5. But the Bills were so mad at the pass interference call, and apparently there was another call or multiple calls earlier in the game, that they refused to stay on the field for this extra point. They left the field and refused to come back. And here is what transpired in New England.
We are getting a report from the field that Buffalo is refusing to come back out for the extra point try.
These are 2 of the greatest finishes in the history of this franchise within 6 days, back-to-back games. The fans are chanting, go for 2, there's no defense.
On the Buffalo go-ahead touchdown, New England was found guilty of 3 penalties by the defensive secondary. That helped set up the Buffalo go-ahead. And now Pete Carroll says go for 2. Watch this.
So Pete Carroll's putting up his hands to go for 2. By the way, if you're listening to just the audio version of the podcast, go watch it on YouTube. But that is the Patriots running it in with no defense on the field and the kicker running it in. They didn't even send the offense out there. They just snapped it, tossed it to the kicker, and Vinatieri ran it in for a 2-point conversion. First off, covering the spread in hilarious fashion, that's what Pete Carroll does and has been doing it for decades now. Love that for him. But going for 2 there, the absolute right move. If the other team's defense is just like, we're not coming out on the field, we're not doing this, absolutely not, you go for 2. You go for 2, even who cares what the point spread is, you go for 2 and get more points. Just say, all right, you don't want to come out here, we're going to take this. Adam Vinatieri is going to run it in for 2 points. Pete Carroll, when he was asked about this, he apparently was like, yeah, Vinatieri couldn't be the only kicker to like miss an extra point when there's no defense on the field. So yeah, just run it in and go for 2. But we need some more protest. Am I being am I old now where I'm like nostalgically misremembering things? I feel like there were more often like legitimate like teams protesting results. I think we need more of that, where you just pull your team off the field. You just say, no, that is so wrong. That is so much crap. We're coming off the field. We're not playing anymore. You screwed this up so badly. We're not playing anymore. We're just not doing it. I want to see that here and there. That'd be fun. Give us once a season. An NFL team just says, we're done. Do it. The NBA plays 82. Baseball plays 162. Yeah, pull your team off the field. There's such a bad strike zone. You just pull your team off the field and say, no, we're not playing. Your strike zone's so bad, we'll take the loss. Yeah, I want to see that some more. It'd be a lot of fun. All right, this has been Bischoff's Briefs. Again, shout out to Rob for sponsoring Bischoff's Briefs. Go Army, beat Navy, and thanks to all of you for listening yet again.